Welcome. We're so glad you joined us. We do so sincerely apologize for our technical difficulties, but we made it. So we're creating and wielding Zola. Much love to each and everyone who's joined us. And we're so excited to be here this first day of Black History Month, where we're going to be celebrating and elevating Black joy. Some kind of wonderful, oh my gosh, yes, relationships across the lifespan. So I'm Linda James Myers, and I will be your moderator today. And we have a new wisdom keeper with us, Dr. Harvey Linder, who is a clinical director at the Metro Social Services of St. Paul. He's also chair of the board of the Cultural Wellness Center, an African-centered organization in Minneapolis, which is a great organization. I'm familiar with it. And he is also past president of the Minnesota chapter of ABPsi and a former Midwest regional representative. He currently serves as the ABPsi Ethics Committee chair, where he's been instrumental in helping us to refocus and revision the ethical principles for Black psychologists around the African-centered framework based on the principles of Ma'at. Welcome, Dr. Linder.
Nice to be with you all. Oh, just one correction. I'm not the Ethics Committee chair. The Ethics Committee co-chairs are Dr. Lisa Whitten and Dr. Pearl Barner. I'm a member of the Ethics Committee.
Okay. Sorry. He's a member of this, but you have been instrumental in terms of developing the Ma'atian philosophy as the basis for our ethics, correct?
Yes, that is correct.
Okay. Why don't we let the rest of our panel introduce themselves?
Yeah, I'll hop in. My name is JoJo Hickson. I'm a third-year clinical psych student at the Chicago School of Professional Psychology in DC. And I have a clinical interest in racial trauma. So I'm always happy to be here and share space with my family. And especially today on the first day of Black History Month, even though it's Black History all year round. So
24/7, 365, yes.
Period. Hi, I'm Robina Onwong'a. I am a fifth-year counseling psychology PhD candidate, and I have like a clinical and research interest in how childhood trauma impacts Black emerging adults.
Hello, everyone. My name is Garrick Beauliere. I am a fourth-year PsyD candidate at the Chicago School of Professional Psychology, and my clinical interests are working with that's my population and Black population with experiences in trauma, mood disorders, and yeah.
Hey, I'm Evan Auguste. I'm the Student Circle, ABPsi Student Circle chair, the Sawubona Healing Circle co-chair, fifth-year student at Fordham University. Hoping to match on internship in a couple weeks. So looking forward to that. The research interests, I specialize in forensics. I do work with racial trauma and justice-involved populations. So that's my little niche.
Well, thank you all for introducing yourselves. And we're so happy that you are able to share this wonderful topic. It's so exciting because I think there's very little celebrating and elevating of Black joy these days. There's so much trauma and trouble everywhere we turn, and it's very toxic. So it's wonderful to have the opportunity to celebrate and elevate Black joy. What do you think Black joy is? Let's let our panelists share what they think Black joy is, or how we get Black joy.
I think, Linda, that's such a loaded question, and you set us up for that because we didn't know we were going to have to answer that. But I think joy is anything that is responsive to the ongoing trauma that we are inherently subject to with regards to white supremacy and racism. And I think that Black joy looks like anything from, I don't know, taking up space for ourselves or, rewriting the rules. So like a lot of these employers in the world say that braids or certain African cultural traditional hairstyles are not professional. And so I think that that can be an affirmation of our joy and of our culture even in and of itself. So I think it definitely looks different from everyone, but I'm interested to see what the family says.
For me, I think Black joy is kind of just embracing your Blackness, unapologetically, and really just embracing it, and not being ashamed of it, in all aspects, so really just embracing who you are as a person, as a Black person, and accepting it as well.
Robina said she wants to go next. She got a really good one, I can see.
I think it's such a loaded question too. I agree with what you all said. I don't really know how to necessarily define it, but I think of like different moments that we have like amidst the struggle. But even just like thinking back to maybe even before that, like what got our ancestors through a lot of the like slavery and genocides and stuff that they've been through was this something within their spirit that helped them move through that. And I think part of that was, in addition to Zola, of course, is joy.
Yeah. And they're very much related, aren't they?
Yeah. And
yeah,
I think like tapping off what everybody's saying, I think about Black joy like almost like a more core, maybe pure sense of joy, right? Because I think we as people learn how to be joyful, like in childhood, before we learn about like the threads of racism and how that's impacted us, right? And so when I think about Black joy, I think about getting back to like the more core spirit of like what makes us human, what makes us, as people say, like spirit beings, right? And so like things that venerate those pure aspects of it, almost like over whatever like levels of racial trauma that might have been endured as we progress through our lives. So getting back to like that more pure sense of self-love, collective love.
Excellent. Dr. Linder?
Well, I want to agree with Evan, and I want to build on what Evan was saying, because I think that part of what's happened with us as African Americans is that we continue to focus on the travails that we've been through and the difficulties that our people have suffered through over the past 400, 600, 2,000 years. And we, in essence, we look maybe too often at what's wrong with our condition as opposed to what's right with our condition. I was looking back over some of the past episodes of Zola Mondays, and one of probably the first episode when we were talking with Baba Wade, and he was talking about how the beginnings of ABPsi, and that ABPsi got started because the Black psychologists at APA were mad that all the focus on the Black condition was about what's wrong with Black people. It was like, all the psychological theories were what they call deficit models. And part of what ABPsi wanted to do was to get away from focusing on all those deficits that Black people have and really be able to explore some of the beauty and wonder of what Black people bring to the table. And so I think that Black joy is discovering yourself and discovering who we are as a people and discovering the contributions that we have made and have yet to make to the world. And once you're in touch with that possibility, and once you're in touch with the limitlessness of our potential to give to the world, then you feel joyful. When you're not focused on how we've been beaten down and all the things we have to overcome, we have overcome, and we have a lot more to give. And so I think once you're in touch with that, and you're in touch with that's a part of you, and that's a part of our being, then you're just flooded with a feeling of joy. So a lot of this stuff about Black psychology and Black self-concept development it's just really about discovering who you are, because we just don't know who we are. And I think it's fitting to jump into that topic in Black History Month, because it's knowing your history and knowing the history of humankind and the history of the world, and in fact, the history of the universe, that can lead you back to that feeling of joy, because you know who you are.
It's wonderful to be in awe of us as the miracles of modern time. I mean, it's just amazing that we not only survive the most wretched form of chattel enslavement ever practiced in the history of humankind, but actually come out of that as the moral and spiritual leaders of this nation. And we still remain so. I just think it's phenomenal. It's awesome. And I think it's some kind of wonderful that we've been able to do that. And I guess for me, Black joy is exemplified in our cultural creations, particularly the music. I particularly think about coming out of the civil rights movement in the 60s and all of the love songs. There was just so much love and joy exuding from all these wonderful artists who seem to understand, without necessarily formal training, that the role of the arts in African culture is to elevate the consciousness of the people. Mm-hmm. And indeed, we come out of chattel enslavement elevating the consciousness of the people, particularly through our music and our dance and our rhythm. So there is so much to celebrate and elevate when we think about Black joy. It truly is our very being. And so being, it's very much connected to our purpose of creating Zola, which we know is love and tranquility and peace and productivity, that place in us where that joy can emerge.
Yeah, I agree. Something Dr. Linder mentioned triggered a thought in me, and he said something about the conditioning or the condition. And I'm a believer that we have to try and focus on the conditioning rather than the condition. So yes, we have been atrociously attacked from every possible angle imaginable, but what is that preparing us for? What is that, what is, I guess, the good part about that? And I guess the thing that we get from that is that we've always been resilient, and that's something that we can epigenetically trace back to, years of our lineage. And also, I did want to bring a comment that someone said in the audience. They said that Black joy is the positivity that emits from living authentically, embracing an Afrocentric ethos, serving and building our own, and remaining in touch with our God and the spirit of our ancestors. And shout out to the person that wrote that comment.
It's on our chat, you said?
It's on the Facebook Live, so I'm monitoring.
Oh,
yeah.
For that, because that's absolutely what Black joy is. One of the things that I think is so important as we celebrate this Black History Month and elevate Black joy is to think about what Dr. Linder, as well as you spoke to, JoJo, which is this notion of conditioning. And to a certain extent, we've been missocialized to understand what joy is and what brings joy. And as a consequence, we're oftentimes pursuing things that may give us instance of gratification, but by their nature, by the nature of those things themselves, it can't really bring us any kind of peace or love or eternal joy, because by their nature, these tend to be material things, which are fleeting. And I think one of the reasons a lot of people don't experience more joy than they do in their lives is because they're too stuck on that dominant culture's conditioning that you can be happy and you can have joy when you have these things or those things or look this way. And all of that is very joy debilitating, joy killing. So as we move to a different understanding, then I think it's helpful.
Yeah, I think just touching on what you said, Anna Linda, I feel like when it comes from, especially like from, Black people, we've obviously accomplished a lot of things, went through a lot of trials and tribulations. And I feel like sometimes people, like even me sometimes, kind of feel conflicted or, guilty for feeling joy because of all this stuff we've gone through, because we know we have more stuff to do. And, none of us want to be complacent in, I guess, the advancement of what we're trying to do. But I feel like the way I sometimes even check myself and combat that is, kind of being present in the moment, identifying, the things that we have done, and understanding that being happy or joyful isn't really dismissing or negating the traumas that we as a people have went through, but just understanding that, there's a time to be joyful, and it's okay to not always be constantly thinking about, all the traumas and the challenges and the issues that we are currently dealing with. So I think that's another part of the joy, understanding and not feeling guilty of being joyful and embracing the joyfulness.
Absolutely true. In fact, the instruction from our ancestors in the wisdom tradition is whatsoever things are good, think on these things, which will bring joy. We're wasting our time and not being present when we're so focused on the negative, when we have the potentiality to always see the good and focus on the good. And that, as you just said, Garrick, will help bring us joy in our lives.
I think that sometimes the reason we feel torn between, paying attention to the difficulties that our people are still struggling with, and being joyful, is we get ourselves caught up in a Western philosophical framework that says you have to be either this or that, and you can't be both. You can't have both at the same time. When in the African wisdom tradition, it's always both. Everything has two sides to it. And those two sides are not in opposition to one another, but they're part of the continuum. It takes both sides to make a whole. And what we have to learn to look at is to look at how what's happening over here also contributes to the whole, and how what's happening over there contributes to the whole. And, get away from this always dividing things into, positive and negative, right and wrong, black and white, and get back to that, what we call diunital thinking, as opposed to this, dichotomous thinking of like understanding the world by dividing things into two. Because when you get into that dividing things, you're always, you almost automatically get into, well, if you divide the things into two, then which one is better? One has to be good, the other has to be bad. And that's not the reality of the way the universe works. When we look at like polar opposites in the universe, we look like the North Pole and the South Pole, we don't ask which one is better, It's like, you need both.
Both and, yes. One of our viewers said, Black joy is revolutionary. It is actually resistance. I love that. So very true.
Yeah, I appreciate you bringing up that point, Garrick, because I feel similar pretty often, especially this past year, like in 2020, when we were all trying to figure out how to basically cope and stay like mentally sane during the pandemic, and then the like killings that were being even more publicized and stuff. And I think that I remember during that time, like back, like in DC, like when the letters are written on the plaza, there would be people that go there and like would dance and sing and stuff like that. And I think there were some people that criticized that, and they're like, oh, how can you do this during like all this that's going on? But I think for a lot of us, like even myself included, having moments where we can do things like that to kind of like recenter ourselves or remind ourselves that we're still allowed to like be happy and to have fun. And there's a question that somebody asked about whether joy and fun is the same thing or what the difference is. And for me, I feel like joy is like encompassing of it. So fun is like part of it. So joy is just like this, the like deeper, I guess, like feeling or spiritual kind of, feeling that we have. And then fun is one of the ways that we like use to like express the joy that we have, which a lot of people did, especially last year in different ways.
What was the question that was asked again, Robina?
Yeah, somebody said, is joy and fun the same thing? Or what's the difference between the two?
Yeah, you can have fun and not have joy. Can you have joy and not have fun? I don't know. One of the things that I want us to consider as well is the reality of trying to be, how can I say this? Trying to dampen our spirits to accommodate what we think other people think we should be doing at the time. We're in the midst of chaos all the time, 24/7, 365. Once again, that negative energy of this nation surrounds us. And even though we have new leadership, it's not a leadership that's saving the soul of America at this point. It's a leadership that's struggling to figure out how to save the soul of America. And so that's very toxic to spiritual beings, because it doesn't feel good to be in such a negative environment if we focus on that. But the thing that we have to be mindful of is that our biggest power is within us and determined by where we put our time and our attention. Are we going to put our time and attention on what's wrong, or are we going to be mindful of what's wrong, but put our time and attention on what's right and what we can make right? And so that's one of the keys to learning how to wield and create Zola. How do you create love and peace and tranquility in the midst of chaos? And that's one of the things that in the wisdom tradition of African deep thought, we've been very good at doing. Otherwise, we would not be here when the intention was that we not be here. But not only are we here, we're here celebrating and creating joy.
You know, one of the ways that I've used to help me focus on it, and I try to teach this to other people. You know, one of the things I learned as I was studying the African wisdom tradition was about, I forgot what I was going to say, is about that learning to be, there are certain things that you want to instill in yourself. And one of those is a sense of thankfulness, learning how to be thankful for whatever situation is given you. Because whatever situation is given you, there's something that you can take out of it that's going to be a benefit to yourself. And just practicing thankfulness. And I do this by asking myself, why am I thankful for this situation? Whatever the situation is, why am I thankful for this situation? What can it do for me to help me be a better person, become a better person? And when you practice doing that, you get back to old saying on the block of, it's all good. The question is, how is it good? Pain is a message. Pain is your body's way of telling you to stop doing what you're doing and change course, do something else. So pain is a positive message. It may hurt, you know, but it hurts because it wants you to change course. And when we encounter these, you know, anomalies in life that we find excruciatingly painful, it's trying to tell us that we need to do something different. And we need to learn how to pick up those messages and transmit those messages to the rest of the world, to society, to the leadership, you know, say, you know, this isn't working, you know, because people are hurting. And the fact that people are hurting means we need to be doing something different. So we take that as a message, as a positive message, and turn it into what it is that we can be doing instead.
I always like to say the purpose of negativity in human experience is our edification and growth, which is another way to say the very thing you just said. But I think that...
It's a way to say it in like 5 words instead of 72.
I've been saying it a long time. But another thing that you just said that I think is really key for me is gratitude. Stay on the gratitude channel, which is essentially another way to say the same thing you just said. It'll pick you up every time. And we always have something to be grateful for as long as we have breath.
I think practicing gratitude is like really integral to distinguishing when we have joy. So I think that sometimes a lot of us experience Black joy and we don't name it that, we don't call it that. So for me, that might look like, and I might not recognize it until like I'm retrospecting, but for me, that might look like I'm entering a white space and there's another Black person in that little head nod to acknowledge each other. That might be Black joy, because I know that like I'm not alone navigating that space, or that somebody might be having a similar experience to me. So I think practicing gratitude is definitely a way that we can increase our consciousness of Black joy and to experience it a lot more.
When do you feel the greatest joy? What are the circumstances when you feel the greatest joy? What are you doing? What are the conditions? What's happening?
I don't know. I feel like part of being extremely joyful is being extremely present, in a sense that when whatever you're doing, whatever you're experiencing, whatever is you're happy doing it, but you're only focusing on that in this moment right now, here. I forgot the word, but I think it goes back to like positive psychology, talking about like flow, and I think joy can be tied into like that flow. You're not focusing onto the past, you're not focusing onto the future, but you're in that flow, you're in that zone, and whatever you're doing is working and you're happy. So I think just tapping into that flow, tapping into that present, focused, I guess mindfulness can help with the joy.
Can you put yourself there at will?
I think with a lot of practice, probably. I can't just zoom. I feel like sometimes when I'm doing certain things, I feel like I'm doing it inadvertently, but it's not like for me, it's not like a superpower where I just tap into it. Sometimes it takes a lot of focus and the concentration, meditation, things like that. But I believe like we've all experienced it, sometimes not even knowing it. Kind of like what JoJo was saying, like not even putting a name to it. I feel like we've all experienced it. And for us, that's that joyfulness. Like for some people, it's playing, for instance, like athletes, when we're in that game, playing whatever sport they're doing, killing it, they're in that zone, they're in that flow, they're joyful, making those shots, kicking that ball, whatever they're doing, they're in that zone. And they're doing so well and they're joyful, but they're not focusing on the past. They're not focusing on the future, but they're just focusing in that game, until the clock hits, 0, 0, 0, 0. So I think just being present.
That's an interesting point, because my guess is, and when you're in that kind of flow, you're not focusing on joy either. You're just in the flow and doing what you do and enjoying what you're doing, but not thinking, oh boy, this is joy.
Exactly. And I feel like even with like doing mindfulness, I feel like some people are trying to, like, even I struggle with it, like just focusing on doing it right, or just focusing on like the act of mindfulness when you should just do it. So I think sometimes it's not even just thinking of achieving something. Yeah, group therapy. It's not even thinking of achieving something, but just literally just doing it. Like it's weird. Like it's hard to explain it, but I think just doing it, by doing it without thinking that you're doing it, is actually getting to that joy that you're seeking. But don't make being joyful like a mission or a goal like you have to achieve. Like you can be joyful, but try not to focus in becoming joyful, if that makes sense.
It's true. I know in these hard times, I just feel joy when I see people being kind to one another. It just makes me full of joy and smile and feel happy.
One thing I've noticed is that human beings tend to experience their most joyful moments, most joyful experiences when they're in the presence of other human beings who are also feeling joyful. And there's something, it's almost like joy is contagious. And if you're around other people who are feeling that joy, then you feel it too. It may be what Nana Linda was referring to when she talked about that Zola energy as being a love energy. It's something that's not, it's immaterial, but it's something that can be transmitted from one person to another. And we tend to feel it when we're in the presence of one another.
Absolutely. And that's one of the things I like so much about our Creating Zola Mondays. You all are so loving and so powerful. You just come into the presence of people who are good-hearted and intending good, and you can feel it. Mm-hmm.
And once you become conscious of the connection that you have with other human beings, you can feel that sense of joy and sense of connectedness, even when you're not in the physical presence of other people, because you have a consciousness that the connection still remains. All of you will be aware that you can feel very connected to someone who may be in another city,
So true. You're awfully quiet today, Evan. Your thoughts?
Well, I mean, I'll be like 100% honest. Is something I think I've been reflecting on a lot the past couple weeks, just because I did just like lose a friend that was very close to me, and so to be joyful in this time has been a very kind of, it's had to be a little bit more intentional, like as you like move through the grieving process. And so, yeah, I think I'm taking it in and appreciating what everybody's saying, and then like reflecting on what are the things during like an overall, like maybe like a sad, few weeks that have like sparked joy, or I've been intentional about it, I've created joy. And I don't know, I think I hear bits and pieces of what everybody's saying. And I think that's what's kind of connecting for me, is that I don't know if I could pinpoint it into like one specific activity or practice or mantra, right? It's been like unintentional, and that it's like come right, like out of nowhere, like watching your nephew walk around after you just learn, like that, like will spark joy. That's unintentional. That's just something you experience, and it's there, and it's been intentional, right? Like it's been me going to my car and putting on like 90s R&B and doing like a karaoke in my car, right? So it's been both, where there's been times where I've had to like pursue it, especially in times when I can't be with other people as much as I would like to, and there's been times when it's just come about. And so that's what I think I'm reflecting, is on like the dynamic, I guess, to your point, like diurnal nature of even something like joy.
Because there's joy and sadness,
Yeah.
The joy and sadness is that it reminds you of why you're sad. You're sad because that was someone you loved, and so you feel that, and so you can have both those emotions together.
One of the things that, as you were talking, Evan, comes to mind is a lot of our absence of joy probably has to do with, again, that missocialization. Because in the wisdom tradition of African deep thought, there is no death. Your friend transitioned, but that energy that they were, energy can't be dissipated. It can only be transformed. And so the life cycle
is still with you.
The life cycle absolutely isn't linear from here, birth to death. It's circular. So as we enter the life plane in body, we will go through the cycles of life to young adulthood, and maturity, elderhood, and back to the spirit realm. And that cycle is eternal. In fact, some people conceive of it as somewhat of a spiral. When you think about that, then we never lose communication.
Yeah.
Loved ones.
Yeah. And I've been like, again, like reading a lot of the stuff that you write and listening to a lot of stuff I've been like reflecting on that heavy. And I think it's the transition period. And so whatever you want to call that, right? It's like getting to know somebody in a different kind of way. It is what it is. It's like, it's somebody that goes from like, oh, this is like a brother in this physical plane of existence. And we're going to experience this together towards, okay, now this is a different relationship that I have with this person. I have to get used to it. And to the point, like there's a level of joy in that, because now you kind of, the things that will spark joy are like the things that remind you of that person's presence, right? And like the way that they're still with you. And then there's also like the sadness in the same time where it's like, we can't share these similar like physical experiences in the same way. So it's like the both end of that. Yeah.
It's true. We have so much to learn, and that's what's so important about creating Zola is understanding that it's all energy. It's all electromagnetic energy. It's with us. It's in us. We are in it. And there's really no separation. There's illusion of separation. And our minds are such powerful, our heart minds in particular are such powerful mechanisms which allow us to access anything we choose to, anytime we choose to, if we decide that's what we want to do. Does that make sense?
It definitely makes sense. If it makes one thing, it's sense.
One of the things that we probably should do is look, do we have any questions or comments from our audience?
Yeah, a lot of comments.
Okay, good. We love those comments.
Oh, something that I actually thought about when you had started to talk about something about the lessons, Dr. Harvey, but the thought that I had is it goes back to something that Nana Linda often has told us about how when things are happening, they're not necessarily happening to us, or like the universe is not against us, or God is not against us, or not necessarily trying to test us in this negative way, but the question is more so like, oh, what are you showing me, or what can I learn from this? When you were talking about being thankful for things. So I think for me, living in, on that gratitude frequency has to do with whenever something happens that my human, self thinks of as an attack or as something that is heartbreaking, I, allow myself to experience those feelings. And I also now have gotten more in the habit of being thankful or being grateful for, that thing that I did have that is making me feel these emotions. So like, oh, the fact that I was able to have a love like this, or to be able to experience this kind of joy, thank you for that. And then also seeing like what I'm being taught in this moment and being grateful for the way that it's happened, even though maybe it's not how I would have wanted it to happen.
Yeah, and just kind of jumping in what Robina was saying, because that was really beautiful. And I feel like just on the opposite side, one thing I'm starting to realize, even with life, is like some things just don't have meaning, in the sense that there isn't I believe sometimes it's just like, I feel like sometimes we always trying to find meaning to everything. And sometimes when something like so abrupt can happen, there can be no meaning into that. And I think that helps me with peace, understanding that there may not be meaning to it. There may not be some sort of reason for what happens, but it's kind of just how I guess I process with everything that, occurred, just trying to find, I feel like sometimes we can go mad just trying to find meaning to everything. And, I don't understand. And kind of just, it's okay. I don't understand either. And I feel like finding peace in the lack of understanding can sometimes help with the healing, because even with us, we don't know everything. We won't know everything when we transition. And it's kind of just accepting that that's okay. We won't know everything. Even things that we want to know why, that curiosity that as humans we all have, we're going to die with curiosity, honestly. We're not going to know everything, but I think it's just understanding, sometimes with life, as abrupt and as random as it is, sometimes there's not a reason for that situation or that scenario, and understanding that there isn't. You may not like it, but understand it, that you don't understand.
And I think it's okay to not be okay. I think that's another way to think about it. But I think in another cultural frame, chance is a law unrecognized. Mm-hmm. Not only is there meaning to everything, there's a law related to it that we may not know. Now, I totally agree with you. In this body, we probably will never know everything because knowledge is infinite. So it's infinite. So as soon as we know this much, there's more and more and more. But I think we shouldn't shy away from trying to find out the answers or the meaning. In fact, in the wisdom tradition of African deep thought, our whole purpose and of highest value is knowledge, wisdom, and understanding. That's why we're here, to gain knowledge, wisdom, and understanding. So every experience that we bring into our lives comes as the opportunity for the growth and elevation. And I think what I hear you saying, Garrick, is when those things come into our life and we don't understand and we don't know the meaning, doesn't mean that we should be, It could mean, this is interesting. Wonder what this is about. Oh, well, I don't know anybody who does know, but I do know there's an omnipotent, omniscient, omnipresent, creative life force that by definition knows all things. And if I ask, I will be informed and I can be at peace.
Yeah, that was perfect.
Thank you.
One of the things that we do is we make meaning. We take things that happen in the universe and we give them meaning for ourselves. And that's one of the ways we cope. We cope by, giving understanding to the universe. But as Nana Linda says, that's why we're here. We're here to, create that understanding and share it, with one another and with our, succeeding generations. We're creating meaning all the time.
And that kind of leads us to the realization that this notion of creating and celebrating like joy and it being some kind of wonderful, almost particularly across a life cycle, almost leads us to conclude that the only, or let me say it differently, the biggest challenge we have is never giving up. Never give up. Never stop desiring that which is true and just and righteous. Never give up wanting to immerse yourself in love and peace and joy, and acknowledging that you have the power within you to do that, irrespective of whatever's coming at you. It takes mastery, but you know what's so exciting is it's self-mastery. You don't have to master anybody else but yourself.
Yeah, and I think that's really, that was actually nice to hear that, because kind of like, what you said, not only, a couple months ago, you don't, you don't fall in love. You kind of, what was it? It was like not falling in love, but you choose love. How did?
I'm afraid to go there. No, just kidding. No, absolutely. We choose.
Wait, are we talking about love making here?
No, not love making. No, but essentially, long story short, I think the whole purpose is to take that initiative, to regain that power. You don't find peace, you create peace. Mm-hmm. Kind of like where you said, Dr. Linder, you're not trying to find the meaning, you create that meaning. And I think that having that power is very important. I feel like that turns us from being helpless to maybe being helpful. So just creating the peace instead of trying to find the peace. Create that understanding instead of trying to find that understanding, because inadvertently you creating that meaning, you found that meaning in itself, and you can teach that meaning to somebody else. And whereas they couldn't create that meaning, they found that meaning through you, from what you created and how you discovered it.
Absolutely true. And we cannot, or we need not be afraid of love, or afraid of loving. We can never love too much.
Yeah, I think another connection that another connection that I kind of just sensed is talking about, you know, being willing to create it is being open to it as well. Because I think sometimes because we go through so much, there can be a point to where we lack that hope. So I think having, you know, the concept of like what radical hope is, I think that connects a lot to joy, because if we're open to, you know, moments where we can feel the joy or see love or these different things, that also contributes to helping us like not want to give up and to continue to like, you know, go another day, because we know that it's there and we're open to receiving it.
So true, so true. I think some of the greatest joy comes from love and being in love. And it is some kind of wonderful when you are in that space. But it's also a space of potential vulnerability. It's a space of developing trust. But I think the key is learning to trust yourself. If you have ultimate faith and trust in you, then what other people do is what other people do. Mm-hmm. But you know you're going to be fine.
And you learn to trust yourself by learning to know yourself. Yes. Learn to know who you really are. And then it's easy to be yourself once you know what that is, you know. So then you don't have to worry about what other people think, you know, because other people have misconceptions all the time, you know. And so I give people an allowance that, you know, they have misconceptions. There are things they don't understand. There are things they don't understand about me. There are things they don't understand about the world. There are things they don't understand about the past. You know, there are things they don't understand about the future. I give them that dispensation. And so then it's easy for me to allow for, you know, I don't have to dislike anybody. I don't have to hate anybody because I understand that, well, maybe they have some misconceptions. I know I've had a lot of misconceptions and still have a lot of misconceptions in my life, but that's part of being human.
Yeah, I had a couple comments, but I did want to say, are we going to stay on an extra 10 minutes since we started late? I know G has class, so I wanted to ask the panelists that. And then I wanted to, when we were talking, it really triggered a thought in me that a lot of our experiences are based on what we have been indoctrinated to believe. So a lot of Western psychology is very pathologizing, and it's like, yeah, let's focus on the sadness. Let's focus on, you know, this perpetual feeling of depression or whatever the case may be. And I think that we've been taught to kind of ruminate, if you will, instead of doing things like what is more African, like Robina said, and allowing ourselves to feel that, to know that this, both joy and sadness can occur. And so I think it's a lot of unlearning. And then my last comment is something that an audience member said, which is that culturally we have not been given permission to not be okay and become unsettled and rest. So definitely learning more about ourselves and who we are and whose we are.
Yeah.
Maybe the next time we can talk more about how we help each other with the unlearning, because part of our challenge is it's difficult for us to learn the things we need to learn because we have to unlearn some of the ways we think about things now.
It is true. And in this social context where there's so many lies and misrepresentations, I mean, we're in an atmosphere of deception and manipulation, just nationally, internationally, globally, that energy is real energy. So that we have to even work harder at the truth of who we are, and work with one another to support one another in being the best we can be and sharing the best of ourselves. Any closing thoughts? Are we going to go a little bit longer?
I'm gonna have to go because I got class in like 1 minute, but I hope you guys do go longer. I think this is a really rich discussion. I feel like a lot of gems are being dropped. I'm gonna catch the tail end once my class is over and just read and see the last 10 minutes of this. But I suggest that you guys keep going. I think this is a really good discussion. I think this is healing in itself, personally.
It is true. I feel better. No, just kidding.
Okay. So, this is a discussion that we're not going to finish in the next 10 minutes anyway. So it's a discussion that we've begun and that will continue, and we will need to continue over time.
Absolutely. And then next Zola Mondays, the third Monday, we'll continue part 2. So absolutely be going on with this kind of conversation. And I've just been so impressed by our Facebook audience, who are just also dropping all kinds of knowledge as we're discussing. So that's beautiful. It's really been a community and collective effort.
And that's what it's going to take. It's going to take a collective community effort for us to develop this communal consciousness of who we are as a people.
And it's not easy, because I think of what you just said too, Dr. Linder. Another way to say what you said is that no one can know you the way you know you. And the only thing we can bring to our engagement with other human beings is ourselves. And so we're going to perceive and think about them, what's in us, maybe not even catching what's actually there. And working that through and really ferreting out who's who, what's what, and what's going on really takes love and patience and joy and commitment and communication and all of those things that we know makes the human collective thrive.
Yeah, so I have a question. Sorry, Evan, I see you unmuted, and I definitely want to hear your tangent because you've been so quick today. I do have a question for y'all for our last 10 minutes. If we could maybe, my esteemed thought leaders and panelists, give the audience some like concrete steps on how to center Black joy, how to find Black joy, especially in the context of where we are right now.
And maybe that includes a book recommendation, because a couple people are asking for maybe book recommendations that can help to put them in the mindset of unlearning what we've been taught and put us more in the mind frame of learning what you were saying, Dr. Linder.
Well, I have a few books, but the key, I think, is question everything. Think critically, think deeply, think for yourself. Mm-hmm. And do that from a self-knowledge base that has you in connection with that divine spirit within you. I always like to think about doing a clearing before I go engage others, where I know I'm imbued with love and love is around me. And therefore, as I go forward, if I encounter energy other than that, I know I didn't bring it. And therefore, I can be at peace and still tranquil and still productive. And I think if we start from there, then it's not, then we don't have to learn, we don't have to worry so much about unlearning as we have to worry about learning. Because we can spend a lot of time trying to unlearn something, which reinforces it at some level. If we just come from that place of our divine spirit beingness and get the peace and love and tranquility that comes with being in that space and go forward, and then we think critically and deeply about that which we encounter, then I think we're off to a good start that's not only self-correcting, but also self-perpetuating. But my tip on joy is music. Oh my God. Play some good music that'll just elevate that energy and bring you joy, and dance.
And my tip on joy is what I said earlier. It's about practicing gratitude, asking yourself in every situation, why can I be thankful for this situation? What is there in this situation that I could be thankful for? And if people practice that over and over, they get more in touch with, what there is to be joyful about.
Evan, did you say something? I'm sorry. I thought I heard you say something.
Nope, didn't say it. What I was going to say is I actually deeply appreciated this conversation, because usually I think on Zola Mondays I like to go on more tangents, as JoJo reminds me every single at least 2 times a month. But no, to receive the wisdom and the experiences of everybody here was also it was also joyful. This is the kind of collective joy that I think you've been referencing. So I appreciate everybody here, and also on Facebook in the comments. Like, shout out to everybody. I see Mary, I see Nicole, Sierra, like Stephanie, everybody going off in the comments. Like we deeply appreciate that.
Hey, Kelly.
And I also appreciated Nana Linda's what reframed it for me, because unfortunately people were asking for books that could help with understanding Black joy and whatnot. And I was really thinking, I was going through like my book list. I was like, damn, I've been reading about like racial trauma a whole lot. Like I'm going through all my books. I'm like, damn, this is Black trauma. This is slavery. This is colonization. This is that. But what I found that what I go to for when I'm looking for joy is music. And so one thing that's on my, like, I think everybody should listen to if you want to have like fun, smile and whatnot. Ari Lennox, her album Shea Butter Baby, that makes me feel happy. That makes me feel good. That's a good one. So I recommend that.
Excellent. Any other thoughts people would like to share before we close?
Yeah, I think my tip for Black joy is definitely music. I'm always encouraging like the scholars that I see at my site to make playlists about their emotions, even if it's sad or whatever. I love music, and I love the song that we use for the intro, Love Yours by J. Cole. It's definitely a song about gratitude and about acknowledging the pain, but also about centering the positive things. And so a big thing for me is my tribe. Like I love every single person that we have engaged on creating Zola Mondays. And anytime I have a little issue or I need to cry about something, I go to one of y'all, and you guys are always there for me. So definitely leaning into our cultural collectiveness that is, an artifact for us.
What was the song again, the name of it?
It's called Love Yours with the Z by Jermaine Cole of North Carolina, born January 28th.
Jermaine Cole. I love some J. Cole too.
It is true. It's such a beautiful song. And it's saying something about there's nobody who's better than you. I mean, that's not what he says.
No one's life is going to be, better than your life.
Yes. I love that, because there is nobody's life who's going to be better than your life. And if there's somebody out there whose life you think is better than your life, work on your life. It's truly not. All of us as human beings, let me say it differently, no one of us as human beings have all advantages. Mm-hmm. Everybody has something they're dealing with they'd prefer not to. But it's their growth, so there's joy in that as well. Well, we have come to 3 more minutes, so we have quickly time to say something else if there's anything people would like to share.
Yeah, my things are pretty similar. So music, dancing, gratitude for sure, because that helps with just bringing my mind back to what actually matters instead of creating all these stories in my head, which I can be very good at doing. And then setting boundaries is pretty important. I know that this necessarily may not seem that it directly aligns with joy, but I feel like for me, being able to say no to things and being able to, just like set boundaries, like in familiar relationships, romantic relationships, work relationships, just all across the board, knowing like what I can handle and not putting too much on myself. And then also knowing like when people are kind of like crossing my line, that helps me to maintain joy and peace.
Absolutely great. Well, we certainly had a lot of good conversation this afternoon. We just hope that you join us again on the 3rd Monday of this month and make this Black History Month the best Black History Month you've ever had. Maybe just by being at peace and in love.
Someone said that they're listening in from Colombia and they're listening for the first time and they were like, I can't explain what I'm feeling. And I think it's Zola.
Yes. Wonderful. Well, thank you from Colombia. So
I'll thank all of you for joining us.
Yes. And keep coming back and keep your comments coming. And feel free to Zola up on us by just sharing, why not we'd love to hear you talk about this topic or that topic or any way that you'd like us to share, because we are truly about creating community here. Just that loving community of people, because as human beings in this time, we are social beings and we need one another and we need that connection. So if we can come together virtually on the first and third Mondays of the month and create Zola, then that's creating and elevating joy. Some kind of wonderful across the lifespan. Listen, you all go out and have a wonderful day. We love you. Be good to one another. Be kind.
Zola.
Okay.
Roll credits. Right, I must take us off.
I'll roll the credits.
Oh, here we go. I'm just learning how to take us off live. I'm sorry, audience. Okay, here we go.